I must tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully because what I'm about to share with you is not just another astrological observation. We are currently moving through an extraordinarily rare cosmic configuration that occurs only once every 30 years. And it's activating something within certain individuals that has been dormant, buried, hidden beneath layers of social conditioning and survival mechanisms. This is not a casual conversation about personality, traits or sun sign compatibility. This is about the part of you that you've been taught to fear, to suppress, to pretend doesn't exist. Right now, as I speak these words to you, there are 4 Zodiac signs experiencing an unprecedented activation of what psychologists call the shadow self. And if you belong to one of these signs, you've already felt it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That inexplicable tension in your chest that wakes you at 3 in the morning. That sudden urge to burn down everything you've carefully built. That voice inside your head that whispers truths you're terrified to acknowledge. You might have dismissed it as stress, as hormones, as just a bad week. But it's not. It's your shadow self rising to the surface, demanding to be seen. And if you continue to ignore it, the consequences will be devastating. Does this resonate with you? Have you noticed that lately you've been having thoughts that shock even yourself? Impulses that seem to come from nowhere. A kind of rage or despair or wild energy that feels both foreign and strangely familiar. Like meeting a version of yourself you've never been introduced to. Let me be absolutely clear about what we're dealing with here. The shadow self is not evil. It's not a demon you need to exorcise. Rather than saying it's the dark side of your personality, it's better to say it's the unintegrated side. The disowned side. The part of you that holds all the qualities, desires, and capacities you were told were unacceptable. When you were a child, every time an adult said don't be angry, don't be selfish, don't be too much, don't want too much, don't take up too much space, you took a piece of your authentic self and you buried it. You had to. It was a survival mechanism. But that buried part didn't disappear. It's been growing in the dark, gaining strength. And now, under this particular cosmic pressure, it's breaking through the surface. The reason this is so urgent right now, the reason I'm speaking with such intensity, is because we're in a window of time where the veil between your conscious self and your unconscious self is thinner than it's been in decades. This isn't just about astrology. This is about the collective awakening that's happening on this planet, and certain individuals are being called to do the deep work first, to become the pioneers of shadow integration, so they can light the way for others. But here's the danger. If you try to keep pushing this energy down, if you continue to pretend you're only the polished, acceptable version of yourself, the shadow will find another way out. It will sabotage your relationships. It will manifest as physical illness. It will erupt in ways you cannot control. Now, before I reveal which 4 signs are most affected, I need you to understand the underlying mechanism of how shadow energy operates. Think of your psyche as a house. The rooms you live in, the spaces you show to guests. These represent your conscious personality, your ego, your social self. But every house has a basement, and in that basement what? You've been throwing everything you don't want to deal with. Old furniture, broken appliances, boxes of memories you'd rather forget. For years, you've been able to keep the basement door locked. But the cosmic weather we're experiencing right now is like a flood, and that water is rising from below, pushing against the door, seeping through the cracks. You can either open the door yourself, on your own terms, and start sorting through what's down there. Or you can wait until the door bursts open and everything comes flooding into your living room all at once. This is not a metaphor. This is exactly what happens psychologically when shadow materially erupts without conscious integration. You'll find yourself saying things you don't mean, making decisions that destroy what you value, pushing away the people you love, all because the shadow is acting out, trying desperately to be acknowledged. The shadow doesn't want to destroy your life. It wants to be included in your life. It wants you to stop pretending you're only light and love and positivity. It wants you to admit that you're also rage and hunger and darkness and power, and that these qualities, when integrated consciously, are not weaknesses but sources of tremendous strength. Have you noticed this shift? Have you felt the pressure building? Maybe you've been experiencing what I call soul exhaustion. That bone-deep tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. Because it's not your body that's tired. It's your psyche. Exhausted from the constant effort of maintaining a false self. Of keeping the shadow locked away. Or perhaps you've noticed that your tolerance for superficiality has completely disappeared. You can't engage in small talk anymore. You can't pretend to care about things that don't matter. You're craving depth, truth, authenticity, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's ugly. This is the shadow calling you home to yourself. This is the invitation to become whole. Now, let me tell you about the 4 zodiac signs that are experiencing this shadow activation most intensely right now, and why. These are not random selections. These 4 signs share specific energetic signatures that make them particularly susceptible to shadow eruption during this cosmic window, but also particularly capable of profound transformation if they do the work. The first sign is Scorpio, and if you're a Scorpio, you're probably not surprised to see your name on this list. You've always known you carry something powerful and dangerous inside you. Scorpio energy is like a nuclear reactor. Its immense power contained within a structure, and when that structure is maintained consciously, when the energy is channeled and directed, Scorpio becomes the most transformative force in the zodiac. But when a Scorpio refuses to acknowledge their shadow, when they try to present themselves as harmless or safe or domesticated, the reactor starts to overheat. The shadow of Scorpio is not just intensity, it's the capacity for disruption, for vengeance, for manipulation, for using emotional insight as a weapon. Every Scorpio knows they can see straight through people, that they understand human psychology at a level that's almost frightening. The question is, light, what are you doing with that power? Right now, Scorpios are being forced to confront the ways they've used their power unconsciously. Maybe you've been manipulating situations without admitting it to yourself. Maybe you've been holding grudges, planning revenge in subtle ways, using your emotional intelligence to control rather than to heal. The shadow is showing you these patterns not to shame you, but to give you a choice. You can continue to wield your power from the shadows, unconsciously, reactively, destructively, or you can bring it into the light, own it, and use it consciously for transformation, for healing, for depth work that actually serves the highest good. The danger for Scorpio right now is implosion or explosion. Either you turn all that destructive energy inward, spiraling into depression, self-harm, addictive behaviors, or you turn it outward, burning bridges, destroying relationships, scorching the earth around you. Neither option serves you. The third option, the one that requires courage, rage, is to sit with the shadow, to acknowledge, yes, I have the capacity for darkness. Yes, I understand power and control and intensity, and I'm going to learn to work with these forces consciously rather than being possessed by them. Does this land for you, Scorpio? Can you feel the truth of what I'm saying? That tightness in your solar plexus. That's the shadow asking to be seen. That urge to either withdraw completely or to lash out. That's the shadow trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. But you don't need that kind of protection anymore. You're strong enough now to integrate this energy, to become whole. The second sign experiencing intense shadow activation is Capricorn. Now, this might surprise some people because Capricorn is oft unseen as the responsible one, the mature one, the one who has it all together. But that's exactly the problem. Capricorn has been so focused on achievement, on success, on maintaining the structure, on being the reliable one, that they've completely disowned their need for rest, for play, for vulnerability, for failure. The shadow of Capricorn is not laziness, as they fear. It's the part of them that's exhausted from carrying the weight of the world, that wants to collapse, that wants to be taken care of, that wants to admit they don't have all the answers. Right now, Capricorns are being confronted with the cost of their relentless drive. Maybe your body is breaking down. Maybe you're experiencing burnout that you can't push through anymore. Maybe you're realizing that all the success you've achieved feels hollow because you sacrificed your emotional life, your relationships, your joy to get there. The shadow is showing you that the person you've been trying to be, the invincible, tireless, always capable person, is not sustainable. It's not even real. It's a defense mechanism you developed to feel safe in a world that felt chaotic and unreliable. But here's what Capricorn needs to understand. Your worth is not determined by your productivity. Your value is not measured by your achievements. The shadow is asking you to stop. To admit that you're human, that you have needs, that you can't do it all alone. And this terrifies you because somewhere deep inside, you believe that if you stop performing, if you stop achieving, if you show weakness, you'll be abandoned, you'll be seen as worthless. You'll lose everything you've worked for. That's the shadow speaking. That's the wounded child inside you who learned that love was conditional. That acceptance had to be earned through accomplishment. And until you integrate this shadow, until you learn that you are worthy simply because you exist, not because of what you produce, you will continue to drive yourself into the ground. And eventually, something will break. Either your health, your relationships, or your spirit. The danger for Capricorn right now is complete collapse or complete rigidity. Either you break down entirely, unable to maintain the facade anymore, or you double down, becoming even more controlling, even more demanding of yourself and others. Building walls so high that no one can reach you. But there's a third option. You can consciously choose to soften, to let people in, to admit that you need help, that you're tired, that you don't have to be strong all the time. This doesn't make you weak. It makes you whole. Can you feel that, Capricorn? That exhaustion that goes deeper than physical tiredness. That's not burnout. That's your soul begging you to stop performing and start living. That tension in your shoulders. That knot in your stomach. That's the shadow carrying all the vulnerability you refuse to acknowledge. And the longer you ignore it, the louder it will scream. The third sign undergoing profound shadow activation is Pisces. Now, Pisces is often romanticized as the dreamer, the empath, the spiritual one, the healer. But what nobody talks about is the shadow side of all that sensitivity, all that porousness, all that capacity to merge with others. The shadow of Pisces is not cruelty or hardness. It's the opposite. It's the complete loss of boundaries, the addiction to suffering, the martyr complex, the tendency to drown in other people's emotions and call it love. It's the part of Pisces that would rather escape into fantasy, into substances, into spiritual bypassing, than face the harsh edges of reality. Right now, Pisces is being forced to confront the ways they've been using their empathy as an excuse to avoid responsibility. Maybe you've been absorbing everyone else's pain because it's easier than dealing with your own. Maybe you've been playing the victim, the one who's always misunderstood, always suffering, always sacrificing, because that role gives you a sense of identity, a sense of purpose, even if it's destroying you. Maybe you've been confusing codependency with compassion, enmeshment with intimacy, self-abandonment with selflessness. The shadow is showing you that your sensitivity, your intuition, your capacity to feel deeply, these are gifts, but only when they're grounded in a strong sense of self, without boundaries, without discernment, without the ability to say no. Your empathy becomes a wound that never heals. A doorway through which everyone else's chaos enters and takes up residence in your psyche. You become a dumping ground for other people's unprocessed emotions. And then you wonder why you're always exhausted, always overwhelmed, always on the verge of falling apart. Here's what Pisces needs to understand, and this is crucial. You cannot heal anyone by drowning with them. You cannot save anyone by losing yourself. The shadow is asking you to develop what seems impossible for Pisces, which is healthy selfishness. The ability to prioritize your own well-being, to protect your own energy, to recognize that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is walk away. This terrifies Pisces because somewhere deep inside, you believe that if you're not suffering, if you're not sacrificing, if you're not available to everyone all the time, then you're not a good person. You're not spiritual. You're not loving. But that's the shadow speaking. That's the wounded part of you that learned early on that your needs didn't matter, that your pain wasn't important, that the only way to receive love was to become whatever other people needed you to be. And until you integrate this shadow, until you learn that you are allowed to have boundaries, that you are allowed to choose yourself, that you are allowed to exist as a separate individual with your own needs and desires, you will continue to lose yourself in other people, and eventually, there will be nothing left of you. The danger for Pisces right now is complete dissolution or complete withdrawal. Either you lose yourself entirely, becoming a ghost in your own life, or you shut down completely, building walls so thick that you can't feel anything anymore, numbing yourself with whatever substance or distraction is available. But there's a third option. You can consciously choose to develop boundaries while maintaining your sensitivity, to learn that saying no to others sometimes means saying yes to yourself, to understand that you can be compassionate without being consumed. Have you noticed this pattern? Have you seen the ways you disappear into other people's stories, other people's problems, other people's emotions? That feeling of not knowing where you end and someone else begins. That's not intimacy. That's enmeshment. That's the shadow trying to protect you from the terror of being a separate self, of having to take responsibility for your own life, of having to face your own pain instead of constantly focusing on everyone else's. The fourth sign experiencing this shadow eruption is Virgo. And this is perhaps the most dangerous one because Virgo's shadow is so socially acceptable, so praised, so rewarded by our culture that most Virgos don't even recognize it as shadow. The shadow of Virgo is perfectionism, criticism, the relentless inner voice that says nothing is ever good enough, including yourself. It's the part of Virgo that has turned self-improvement into self-punishment, that has weaponized discernment into judgment, that has transformed the desire to be helpful into a compulsive need to fix everything and everyone. Right now, Virgos are being confronted with the cost of their perfectionism. Maybe you're realizing that your standards are so high that you've made it impossible for anyone, including yourself, to meet them. Maybe you're seeing how your constant criticism, even when it's well-intentioned, even when it's accurate, has pushed people away, has made them feel like they're never enough, like they're always falling short. Maybe you're recognizing that your need to control every detail, to have everything organized and optimized and efficient, is actually a defense mechanism against the chaos and uncertainty of being alive. The shadow is showing you that your analytical mind, your attention to detail, your capacity to see what needs improvement, these are gifts, but only when they're balanced with acceptance, with compassion, with the ability to embrace imperfection. Without that balance, your discernment becomes cruelty, your helpfulness becomes control, your desire for excellence becomes a prison that traps you and everyone around you. Here's what Virgo needs to understand. Perfection is not the goal. Wholeness is the goal, and wholeness includes the messy parts, the broken parts, the parts that don't fit into your carefully organized system. The shadow is asking you to stop trying to fix yourself, to stop treating your humanity as a problem that needs to be solved, to recognize that your worth is not determined by how productive you are, how organized you are, how much you accomplish in a day. This is almost impossible for Virgo to accept because your entire identity is built around being useful, being competent, being the one who has it together. You've been praised your whole life for your work ethic, your attention to detail, your ability to handle things that others can't. But underneath all of that, there's a terrified child who believes that if they're not useful, if they're not perfect, if they make a mistake, they will be rejected, abandoned, deemed worthless. That's the shadow speaking. That's the wound that drives your perfectionism, your criticism, your relentless self-improvement. And until you integrate this shadow, until you learn that you are lovable even when you're messy, even when you failed, even when you don't have it all figured out, you will continue to exhaust yourself trying to meet impossible standards. And eventually, something will break. Either your body, your mind, or your spirit. The danger for Virgo right now is paralysis or compulsion. Either you become so afraid of making mistakes that you can't take any action at all, or you become even more controlling, even more critical, micromanaging every aspect of your life and everyone else's until you're completely isolated. But there's a third option. You can consciously choose to practice imperfection, to make mistakes on purpose, to let things be messy, to trust that you are enough exactly as you are, without needing to constantly improve or optimize or fix. Now, here's what all four of these signs have in common. And this is the key to understanding why they're being activated right now. Scorpio, Capricorn, Pisces, and Virgo are what I call the transformation signs. They're not the initiators like Aries or the stabilizers like Taurus. They're the ones who do the deep work. The shadow work. The work of taking what's broken and making it hold. What's hidden and bringing it to light. What's fragmented and integrating it. But in order to do that work for others, they first have to do it for themselves. And that's what's happening right now. These four signs are being given an unfair advantage. A golden ticket. A cosmic download that will allow them to access levels of power and authenticity that most people never reach. But only if they're willing to face their shadows. Only if they're willing to stop running. Stop hiding. Stop pretending. The universe is not punishing you. The universe is initiating you. This is not a crisis. This is a calling. But I need to be very clear about something. This window of opportunity is not infinite. We're in a specific astrological configuration that's creating the conditions for rapid shadow integration. But that configuration is temporary. If you wait, if you keep pushing this down, if you continue to ignore what's rising to the surface, the energy will shift, the door will close, and you'll have to wait another cycle, another lifetime perhaps, for this kind of opportunity to come around again. So what do? How do you actually integrate the shadow? Because it's not enough to just acknowledge it. It's not enough to say, yes, I have a shadow. Yes, I have darkness. You have to actively work with it. You have to develop a relationship with it. And this is where most people get stuck because we've been taught that the way to deal with negative emotions, with dark impulses, with shadow material, is to either suppress it or express it, either push it down or act it out. But both of those approaches are destructive. Shadow integration is a third way. It's not suppression and it's not expression. It's conscious relationship. It's learning to hold space for the shadow, to listen to what it's trying to tell you, to understand the needs and fears and wounds that are driving it, without letting it take over your life. Think of it like this. The shadow is not your enemy. It's a part of you that's been exiled, that's been rejected, that's been told it's not allowed to exist. And like any exiled part, it's angry, it's hurt, it's desperate for attention. When you try to suppress it, it gets louder. When you act it out unconsciously, it causes destruction. But when you turn toward it with curiosity and compassion, when you say, I see you, I hear you, I'm willing to understand what you need, something shifts. The shadow doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be integrated. And integration means bringing it into conscious awareness, understanding its origins, recognizing the legitimate needs it's trying to meet, and finding healthy ways to meet those needs. For Scorpio, this might mean acknowledging your need for power and control, and finding ways to exercise that power consciously, through leadership, through transformation work, through helping others navigate their own darkness. For Capricorn, it might mean acknowledging your need for rest and vulnerability, and creating structures that allow you to be human, not just productive. For Pisces, it might mean acknowledging your need for boundaries and selfhood, and learning to say no without guilt. To prioritize your own well-being without feeling selfish. For Virgo, it might mean acknowledging your need for acceptance and imperfection, and practicing self-compassion, allowing yourself to be messy, to make mistakes, to be human. This is not easy work. This is not a weekend workshop or a self-help book or a meditation app. This is deep, ongoing, sometimes painful work that requires courage and commitment and support. But it's also the most important work you will ever do, because until you integrate your shadow, you are not whole. You are living a half-life, presenting a false self to the world, exhausting yourself trying to maintain an image that isn't real, and the cost of that is enormous. It's your health, your relationships, your creativity, your joy, your authentic power. So let me give you a practical framework for beginning this work. Because I know that what I've described so far might feel overwhelming, might feel too big gig, too abstract. You might be thinking, okay, I understand that I have a shadow. I understand that it needs to be integrated. But what do I actually do? How do I start? The first step is what I call the witness practice. This is about developing the capacity to observe your own thoughts, emotions, and impulses without immediately identifying with them or acting on them. When you feel that surge of rage, that impulse to destroy, that urge to control, that desire to escape, instead of either suppressing it or acting on it, you pause, you take a breath, and you say to yourself, there's a part of me that feels this way, not I am this feeling, but there's a part of me experiencing this. This small shift in language creates space between you and the shadow, allows you to observe it without being consumed by it. For Scorpio, this might look like noticing when you're about to manipulate a situation or use your emotional insight as a weapon, and instead of judging yourself for acting on the impulse, you get curious. What am I actually afraid of right now? What do I think will happen if I don't control this situation? What need am I trying to meet through this behavior? For Capricorn, it might look like noticing when you're pushing yourself beyond your limits, when you're saying yes when you want to say no, when you're prioritizing productivity over your own well-being, and asking, what am I trying to prove? Who am I trying to be good enough for? What am I afraid will happen if I rest? For Pisces, it might look like noticing when you're about to absorb someone else's emotions, when you're about to sacrifice your own needs for someone else's comfort, when you're about to lose yourself in someone else's story, and asking, whose feelings am I actually feeling right now? Where do I end and this other person begins? What am I avoiding in my own life by focusing on theirs? For Virgo, it might look like noticing when you're being critical, when you're trying to fix something that doesn't need fixing, when you're holding yourself or others to impossible standards, and asking, what am I really afraid of? What does imperfection mean to me? What do I think will happen if I let things be messy? This witness practice is not about stopping the shadow from arising. It's about changing your relationship to it. Because, here's the truth. You cannot control what arises in your psyche. You cannot control what thoughts appear, what emotions surface, what impulses emerge. But you can control how you respond to them, and that's where your power lies. Not in being perfect, not in only having acceptable thoughts and feelings, but in being conscious, in being aware, in being able to choose your response rather than being driven by unconscious patterns. The second step is what I call shadow dialogue. This is a practice where you actually communicate with your shadow as if it were a separate entity. Because in a sense, it is. It's a part of you that has been split off, disowned, exiled. And like any exiled part, it needs to be heard. It needs to be understood. It needs to be welcomed back. You can do this through journaling, where you write questions to your shadow and then allow it to respond. You can do this through visualization, where you imagine your shadow as a figure and have a conversation with it. You can do this through art, through movement, through any creative practice that allows the unconscious to express itself. The key is to approach this dialogue with genuine curiosity and compassion, not with judgment or fear. You're not trying to get rid of the shadow. You're trying to understand it. You might ask questions like, what are you trying to protect me from? What do you need that you're not getting? What would happen if I allowed you to exist? What gift are you trying to bring me? And then you listen. You allow whatever arises to arise, without censoring it, without trying to make it more acceptable or spiritual or positive. You let the shadow speak its truth. What you often undiscover through this practice is that the shadow is not actually trying to destroy your life. It's trying to protect you, but it's using outdated strategies. Strategies that might have worked when you were a child, but are no longer serving you as an adult. The shadow that makes Scorpio want to control and manipulate is actually trying to protect you from being vulnerable, from being hurt, from being betrayed. The shadow that makes Capricorn work relentlessly is trying to protect you from being seen as worthless, from being abandoned, from losing your sense of identity. The shadow that makes Pisces lose boundaries is trying to protect you from being alone, from being rejected, from having to face your own pain. The shadow that makes Virgo perfectionist is trying to protect you from being criticized, from making mistakes, from being seen as inadequate. Once you understand what the shadow is trying to do, once you recognize the legitimate need underneath the destructive behavior, you can start to find healthier ways to meet that need. You can say to your shadow, I understand that you're trying to keep me safe, and I appreciate that. But we don't need these strategies anymore. We're not that wounded child anymore. We're an adult now, and we have other options. And then you work together with your shadow to develop new strategies, new ways of meeting those needs that don't require you to hurt yourself or others. The third step, and this is crucial, is what I call embodied release. Because shadow work is not just a mental or emotional process. The shadow lives in your body. All those emotions you've suppressed, all those impulses you've denied, all those parts of yourself you've rejected, they're stored in your nervous system, in your muscles, in your tissues, and until you release them physically, they will continue to create tension, pain, illness. This is why so many people who do shadow work only intellectually, only through talking or thinking, don't experience real transformation. They understand their shadow conceptually, but they haven't actually released it from their body. Embodied release can take many forms. It might be intense physical exercise that allows you to discharge pent-up energy. It might be breathwork that accesses and releases stored emotions. It might be somatic therapy that works directly with the body's holding patterns. It might be dance, or martial arts, or any practice that allows you to express what's been suppressed in a safe, contained way. The key is that you're not just thinking about the shadow or talking about the shadow. You're actually moving it through and out of your body. For Scorpio, this might mean finding healthy outlets for your intensity, your power, your rage. Maybe it's kickbacking. Maybe it's intense breathwork. Maybe it's passionate creative expression. Whatever it is, it needs to match the intensity of what you're feeling. You can't release Scorpio energy through gentle yoga. You need something that can handle the force of what's inside you. For Capricorn, this might mean practices that help you soften, that help you release the chronic tension you carry in your body from years of pushing and striving. Maybe it's restorative yoga, maybe it's massage, maybe it's simply allowing yourself to cry, to collapse, to be held. For Pisces, this might mean practices that help you ground, that help you come back into your body instead of constantly floating out of it. Maybe it's walking barefoot on the earth. Maybe it's weight training. Maybe it's any practice that reminds you that you have a body, that you are a physical being with edges and boundaries. For Virgo, this might mean practices that help you release control, that help you access spontaneity and messiness. Maybe it's improvisational dance. Maybe it's making art without any plan or goal. Maybe it's any practice that allows you to be imperfect, to make mistakes, to let go. Now, I want to address something that might be coming up for you as you listen to this. You might be feeling resistance. You might be thinking, this sounds too hard, too scary. Too much. I don't have time for this. I don't have the energy for this. I'm already overwhelmed. And I want you to know that this resistance is normal. It's expected. It's actually a sign that you're getting close to something real, something important. The conscious self doesn't want to do shadow work because shadow work threatens its control, its carefully constructed identity, its sense of who you are. But here's what I need you to understand. The cost of not doing this work is far greater than the cost of doing it. Yes, shadow integration is challenging. Yes, it requires time and energy and courage. But continuing to live a divided life, continuing to suppress and deny and reject parts of yourself, that's exhausting. That's what's actually draining your energy, creating your anxiety, manifesting as physical illness. The shadow work might be intense, but it's not more intense than the suffering you're already experiencing by trying to keep the shadow locked away. And here's the other thing. You don't have to do this work alone. In fact, you can't do it alone. Shadow work requires witnesses, requires support, requires people who can hold space for you as you explore the darkest parts of yourself. This might be a therapist, a coach, a spiritual guide, a trusted friend, a support group. Whoever it is, they need to be someone who won't judge you, who won't try to fix you, who won't be frightened by your shadow. They need to be someone who can say, I see all of you, the light and the dark, and you are still worthy of love. This is especially important for the 4 signs we've been discussing because each of you has a tendency to isolate when you're struggling. Scorpio withdraws into secrecy. Capricorn pretends everything is fine and handles it alone. Pisces disappears into fantasy or merges with others instead of being truly seen. Virgo becomes even more self-reliant and refuses to admit they need help. But shadow integration requires vulnerability. It requires you to let people see the parts of you that you've been hiding. And that's terrifying, I know. But it's also liberating. Because when you finally allow yourself to be seen in your wholeness, when you stop performing, stop pretending, stop trying to be only the acceptable parts of yourself, something miraculous happens. You discover that you are still lovable. You discover that your darkness doesn't make you unworthy. You discover that the people who truly matter, the people who are meant to be in your life, they don't want the edited version of you. They want the real you, the whole you, the messy, complicated, contradictory, beautiful disaster that you actually are. And this is where the real transformation happens. Not in becoming perfect, not in transcending your shadow, not in only being light and love and positivity, but in becoming integrated, in becoming whole, in learning to hold all of yourself with compassion and consciousness. This is what it means to be truly powerful. Not the power of control or domination or perfection, but the power of authenticity, of wholeness, of being fully human. So here's what I want you to do right now. Especially if you're one of these 4 signs. I want you to stop for a moment and acknowledge one thing about your shadow that you've been refusing to see. Just one thing. Maybe it's Scorpio acknowledging, yes, I do want power and control, and that's okay. Maybe it's Capricorn acknowledging, I am exhausted and I need help, and that's okay. Maybe it's Pisces acknowledging, yes, I do have needs and boundaries, and that's okay. Maybe it's Virgo acknowledging, yes, I am imperfect and that's okay. Just that one acknowledgement. That one moment of honesty with yourself. That's the beginning. That's the crack in the door. That's the invitation to your shadow to come home. And from there, you can start the deeper work. You can start the witness practice, the shadow dialogue, the embodied release. You can start building a relationship with the parts of yourself you've been rejecting. You can start the journey toward wholeness. But you have to start now. You have to take advantage of this cosmic window while it's open. Because the energy that's available right now, the support that's available from the universe, from your guides, from your higher self, it won't always be this accessible. We're in a rare moment where the veil is thin, where the unconscious is close to the surface, where transformation is possible at a speed and depth that's usually not available. This is your moment. This is your invitation. This is your initiation. And I want to be very clear about what's on the other side of this work. Because it's not just about healing your wounds or integrating your shadow or becoming whole, although those things are profound and valuable. It's about accessing your authentic power, your true gifts, your soul's purpose. Every single quality that you've been suppressing, every single part of yourself that you've been rejecting. It holds medicine. It holds power. It holds gifts that the world needs. Scorpio's capacity for intensity and transformation, when integrated, becomes the ability to guide others through their own darkness, to facilitate deep healing, to see truth that others miss. Capricorn's capacity for structure and achievement, when balanced with vulnerability and rest, becomes the ability to build things that last, to create systems that serve, to lead with wisdom and compassion. Pisces' capacity for empathy and sensitivity, when grounded in strong boundaries, becomes the ability to hold space for others without losing yourself, to channel divine wisdom, to create art and beauty that touches souls. Virgo's capacity for discernment and excellence, when balanced with acceptance and compassion, becomes the ability to see what needs healing and actually heal it, to serve in ways that truly help, to bring order to chaos without destroying the organic messiness of life. These are not small gifts. These are not minor talents. These are the gifts that the world desperately needs right now. But you can only access them by integrating your shadow, by becoming whole, by stopping the exhausting work of pretending to be only half of who you are. The world doesn't need more people who are only light. The world needs people who have integrated their darkness, who have faced their shadows, who have become whole, because those are the people who can hold space for others to do the same. Those are the people who can lead us through the collective shadow work that humanity is being called to do right now. This is not just about your personal healing. This is about your role in the collective transformation. You are being called to be a pioneer, to go first, to do the deep work so that you can light the way for others. And yes, that's a big responsibility. Yes, that's a sacred calling. But you wouldn't be feeling this pull. You wouldn't be experiencing this shadow activation if you weren't ready for it. Your soul chose this. Your higher self signed up for this. And everything you've experienced in your life up until this point has been preparing you for this moment. So take a deep breath. Feel into your body. Notice what's arising. Notice the fear, the resistance, the hope, the recognition. All of it is welcome. All of it is part of the process. And know that you are not alone in this. There are others walking this path with you. There are guides supporting you. There is a cosmic intelligence orchestrating this entire process. You are held. You are supported. You are loved. Exactly as you are. Shadow and all. The journey of shadow integration is not a straight line. It's not a one-time event. It's a spiral. A dance. A lifelong practice of becoming more and more whole. More and more authentic. More and more yourself. There will be moments of breakthrough and moments of backsliding. There will be days when you feel like you've got it all figured out and days when you feel like you're back at square one. That's normal. That's part of the process. The shadow doesn't get integrated once and then stay integrated forever. It's an ongoing relationship. An ongoing practice of consciousness and compassion. But every time you choose to face your shadow instead of running from it, every time you choose integration instead of suppression or expression, every time you choose wholeness instead of perfection, you become more powerful, more authentic, more alive, and that ripples out. It affects your relationships, your work, your entire life. It affects the people around you who feel permission to be more authentic themselves. It affects the collective consciousness, adding your light to the growing wave of awakening that's happening on this